Welcome to The Beam, where curiosity meets conversations, taking us a step further into the future we desire. I'm Sunas Nathaniel, and today we'll be looking at tech approaches to addressing the drop in Nigeria's educational standards. Recently, results of the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME, for university hopefuls were released by the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board, JAMB. According to the JAMB registrar, over 1.9 million candidates registered and sat for that examination in 118 towns and over 700 centers across the nation. Out of the over 1.9 million candidates that sat for that exam, the results of at least 1.84 million have been released, and only 0.4% of that number scored above 300, while 24% scored 50%, which is about 200 out of 400. Now, about 1.4 million candidates scored below 200, a performance totally abysmal, below par, leaving many asking what is wrong with the system and how can we fix this drop in the standard of education. Joining me here in our Abuja studios to dissect this matter, to get us to the real issues, what really is the problem, is none other than Mr. Jeremiah Oseni, a development practitioner who serves as founder and executive director of the Begotten Educational Foundation, a non-profit that advocates for access to quality and safe education in underserved Nigerian communities. Mr. Oseni, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get right to the matter. Do we agree first that there is a problem in the Nigerian educational standard or the system or the sector as we speak right now? And if we do agree, the question will be, what are the underlying factors? What are the contributing factors? What are the things that are making us see that decline in the educational sector?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very wonderful question. And if I must add, I love the fact that where you said if I must agree, because it's an agreeable question to every Nigerian right now, not just to education administrators or key players in the sector. It is something that is visible to the blind and, of course, audible to the deaf, that we have an education sector, a very critical pillar amongst the 7 pillars of the society that has not just collapsed but has already started decaying. And you asked about the areas, the components or the various subsectors of this system that has made it this bad, or the contributing factors rather. And I would start from the areas of teachers' professional development. So there's the popular saying that says that you cannot beat the quality of, no education system can beat the quality of its teachers. So we still have a society where teachers' welfares are not being prioritized, where teachers' training and retraining are not being prioritized. So we still have teachers, governing classrooms. Again, I'm using my words carefully. Governing classrooms, dominating classroom, being in charge of knowledge, which is not supposed to be so. We still have teachers who, are governing classrooms. They've been governing these classrooms for the past, 15, 20 years, using outdated curriculum, dishing out, outdated knowledge to new learners, using knowledge from, in the 80s, 90s, even down to 60s for 2024 new age learners. So these are the things these are some of the issues. And we're also looking at things such as out of school. This has come about, due to funding as well, poor funding in the educational system, lack of motivation for schools, and of course a huge attack, a huge, record. Data has pointed to that on attack on education across the country. So this has further led to the decay in the system. Attacks on education has led to, a large, massive scale dropout of schools, and where today, especially states in the north, states in the southeast, states in the west, even states in the north central, you're seeing thousands of children that are out of school due to different reasons, right? I've just mentioned demotivation. I've mentioned attacks on education. Even the demolition, the current demolition exercises due to development, that's going on in cities across Nigeria has also been seen as one of the factors that is also pushing children out of school, thereby reducing this pillar to what it is today.
It's funny that we would speak about security because it seems like we've talked about security so much in this country that it's almost become something that everybody just says, okay, it's just another excuse, right? But beyond all this, beyond some of the things you've mentioned, people would say to you that there's something about the generation, Gen Z per se, that's the generation on board right now, yes? So that generation, there's something about them and social media that is also making that downward spiral when it comes to the education sector. What do you have to say about that?
Exactly. So now that's where innovation comes to play. So education, most of the times I'm very quick to let people know that education is not all about to bring about, professionals, great medical doctors, or the best lawyers in the world. Education is to bring about better humans, better human beings in the society. Now, it all boils down to the teaching and learning. First, the teachers. Second, the environment. Now, even before we even proceed, according to the UNICEF model of quality of education, the UNICEF, outlined 5, models to describe a quality education. And of course, first of which is the learners. Okay, so it starts with the learners. Now, in a classroom where the learners are not being taught in a way that they understand, they're not being taught, content in their language. The delivery process of in a classroom is not in such a way that the learner can understand. I mean, you can't go to Sokoto, for instance, in remote villages in Sokoto, for instance, where predominantly everybody, have conversations with the local dialect, and then you use an Igbo language to teach them stuff. It's not going to work. So the same thing when we don't train these teachers and they go into the classroom, right, to teach 2024 learners, the same way they taught our great-grandfathers, there's no way they're going to understand that. So you see a child who you think is dull, however, is an influencer, a big influencer on TikTok. There's an issue. TikTok, they were not born with TikTok. They were not born to know how to operate Instagram, for instance, right? They learned it, right? It means that they caught an interest on those platforms, and they were able to learn in an interesting way, in an intriguing manner, for them to, get the perfection at the end of the day. So what we usually advocate for and how we design our project, our educational initiatives at the Begotten Educational Foundation is such a way where the knowledge that the learners demand meets the system of delivery that the teacher is using to impact them in the class. That is when you say teaching and learning has occurred, and of course, a desired outcome will come out at the end of the day. So it all boils down in all of my explanation today to the style and method of teaching in the classroom. And again, a teacher will not adequately deploy 2024 AI-driven tech, teaching delivery, delivery lecture in the classroom if they are not being trained. No school administrator, talking about the government angle now, no public school administrator will be able to train their teachers effectively if there's not a budget allocated for that. All right. So needless for me to talk about corruption in the system as well, and all of that. But this is what it boils down to.
All right.
If the right teaching method is used for our learners, they will pick up. Because I tell them education is still not a scam.
All right. So quickly, I'm going to play a video currently, which you guys did. In the recent, the organization put out a short documentary that highlighted, insecurity, went on to speak about, displaced individuals and all that. You're going to speak further as to how this contributes to, the downward spiral that we are seeing in the educational sector. I think we should just take a look at that video just for a brief minute and see what it has to say, and especially the facts that we are, embedded in that video. I think we'll play that and then come back to discuss about it.
All right, that's fine.
Nigeria. The situation of children being displaced and out of school is quite significant. As per the UNICEF Country Office Annual Report 2022, about 58% of children from the poorest households are out of school. It is estimated that 1 in every 5 out-of-school children around the globe is in Nigeria. This is a major concern.
The trucks arrived, 3 bulldozers. So they started demolition.
A caterpillar just came to the village and there was panic all over in the village. So we're just watching and waiting to see what will happen.
They came, put the caterpillar down. We just watch them because we cannot fight them. Later, one day they just come, started demolishing houses. As they see some of them here, they don't have house.
I say I'm an indigent. Where will I run to? I have children. I don't have any place to go. Where else do you want me to go with my family?
In 2021, due to increasing security threats, including attacks on schools, 1,140 children were abducted and 16 children were killed. This resulted in the closure of 618 schools in 6 northern states, contributing to learning losses for over 2 months.
All right, it's heartbreaking to see that documentary and to see the plight of the people. So let's speak to it as to how it contributes to our discussion today.
Okay, so this documentary came as a result of, inspections, because we usually do carry out evaluation on our project. And in the FCT, the Begotten Educational Foundation has 32 communities where we provide, education to where we solve their education needs. So this happened, the first case was in one of our communities where in that particular community we had, in the past 2 years, enrolled 6 children into school. We had 2 male and of course 4 females. So at the beginning of this year, 2024, we went back to have an assessment, to have to look at the children, visit the schools, and renew the school fees and all of that, the tuitions and all that. And then at first we were stopped at the entrance of the community by armed men. Oh, you can't enter here. There's an exercise going on. Only then did we discover that a large-scale demolition was going on in the community. To cut the long story short, we had to contact our partners who were there, the local community member, the chief, in particular, and then he spoke with the uniformed men, and we were allowed access. To our amazement, that community, which had 17 schools before now, was only left with just 1 school. Over 2,000 buildings were already brought down. Primary healthcare centers inclusive, 17 schools, 16 out of the 17 were already gone. So in that community, which was a bubbling community before now, which was a great place before now, only had just 1 school standing. I'm talking about a large community where you have, there was everything. They had 3 transformers to tell you how large it is, right? So we were shocked as to how will a demolition exercise occur in this large scale without the presence of the media, without the presence of, the demolition bodies following the due process, which is relocation or resettlement, right? Because we now had to start to ask, community members, our stakeholders who were there, the king and of course the chief, and even passerbys and owners of private schools, were you served an eviction notice? A lot of them, of course, on the part of the government, yes, they did that, but some of them still remained there, right? But when the time for the execution came, the main execution, time. How long duration? When was the duration? And they told them that they came the first day, they marked, the next day was execution. Now, we are not, as a body, the Begotten Educational Foundation, of course, as patriotic citizens, we are not, standing in lines of development. We are not standing in lines of, government expanding, cities and of course, developing infrastructures. However, we are appalled. We are concerned. We are deeply concerned that the collateral damages in this particular case of, demolition are not being factored into the plan, are nowhere in the equation. Because originally, according to the plan, if you be demolishing settlements such as that, large-scale settlements, right? There is something called resettlement, where you resettle these individuals. They are human beings, they are not animals, they are not trees or goats. These are human beings.
But I want to ask you, did you guys reach out to the authorities to know what the resettlement plan was for?
Of course. That's why I can categorically say that there was no plan for education, right? To say, okay, this community already has or is currently having 17 schools. Hey, Mr. Chief, Mrs. Market Woman, Oga, school owner, come. Parents, come. We're going to demolish this place because this is an illegal settlement, which of course was an illegal settlement. However, because these people still enjoy fundamental human rights, they have the right to learning, right, to information and all of that. Education is a fundamental human right. okay, we're going to demolish this settlement. However, we've been able to build a replica of this school somewhere else, or even half the amount of this structure somewhere else. So move your kids to this place so that a large-scale demolition can occur.
All right.
Nothing of such happened.
We're going to hold it there, and when we come back, perhaps we'll still speak on that, because it's very key that if these demolitions are happening, if these movements are happening, education needs to be factored. We'll be taking a quick break at this moment, and when we return, we'll be looking at more of the use of, tech, more of those researches to fix Nigeria's dwindling educational standards. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching The Beam, coming to you live from our studios in Abuja. Our guest Jeremiah Oseni is still with us here, and we're still looking at tech approaches to addressing the drop in Nigeria's educational standards. Before we left, we were talking about how some of these demolitions are affecting, schools. And the question will be, what will be the appeal right now when it comes to processes like this?
Okay, so due to attacks on education before now, right, we've had, the last, report on out of school in Nigeria was close to 20 million, which of course, in recent years, we've also, recorded abductions in schools, and of course, plus attacks like this due to, development, exercises. I in particular am thinking right now as a nation, even with the hardship, and all of that contributing, I think we should be having close to 30 million children already. However, tech can also help us, build. Tech can help us enable, teaching and learning even in times like this as well. For instance, we can adopt tech solutions such as e-learning, creating e-learning platforms, right? And what e-learning platforms will do is to bridge the gap of physical schools, which is access. Okay, to ensure that, for instance, what some non-profit is also doing in Lagos State, where they have some e-learning platforms where learners, in Makoko, in those, remote communities, can learn from a central location, right? So technology solutions such as that will help, address the issue of, lack of access to education. And also you have virtual classrooms as well. So what solution that this tech, innovation can bring on board is the areas of virtual learning. Okay, the areas of virtual learning, especially for communities that are, in violence, conflict, and fragile, zones, of the country. So these virtual learning platforms, these e-learning platforms, and of course, e-learning platforms will be able to facilitate learning to even these children who can, for instance, cross through a community toward their community due to crisis that is happening or issue around, climate change and all that. Then we have other technological solutions such as, AI-powered adaptive learning. So these will help learners with disabilities. These will, facilitate learning, easy learning for learners, classroom learners, say those with auditory issues, that are learners that are visually impaired and all that. Because with the new wave of artificial intelligence right now, it is right, for artificial intelligence to not just be, for government to not just be looking at how this can generate jobs or how this can solve healthcare issues, but also how can we deploy it into this comatose pillar of our society, which is the education, pillar, to see how we can revive it or resuscitate education in Nigeria, which is very, very doable, right? I believe we have the fund. We have the funding for this as a nation, but the political will is what I often talk about. Then we still have the giant in the room, which is teachers training and support, right? There is a way teachers can be trained in artificial intelligence, right, on how to teach, on ways to source content, on even the teaching methodologies, in using new AI teaching methodologies, using new AI tools, as new methods of delivering teaching and learning in the classrooms. For instance, last year our foundation partnered with the African University of Science and Technologies in collaboration with the World Bank and other partners to train 1,500 teachers in Ogun State, inclusive, which was, co-organized by the government of the state, in person of the governor, Prince Dapo Abiodun, and it was a fantastic project. We were able to train 1,500 teachers in what we call the PSI and PMI teaching methodology. PSI simply stands for Progressive Science Initiative, and PMI stands for Progressive Maths Initiative. It is a new world method of teaching STEM in schools that was fascinating to even us, the local implementers, and of course to the teachers. And they received that training with joy. And today, when they released the last result for JAMB, you could see that among the top 10, over 60 or 70% of the best in JAM came from that state. So we are now advocating that such training, such method of teaching, such teaching methodology can be scaled up to other states of the country and, of course, to the entire 36 states, just so that we can have teachers equipped with the right method of deploying this knowledge. Our children in Nigeria don't have amnesia. They don't have brain damage. The difference is just the language that the teacher is speaking or the style of delivery that the teacher is using.
It's different from what they know.
That is different from what they know, what they want, and of course what they can assimilate. Then finally, we have tech solutions that can also solve issues around education management system. Now, schools on their own, administrators, can even build up platforms using artificial intelligence again as a case study, right? As a tool rather, to manage data. Now, as we stand, there are no clear figure in Nigeria to say, okay, these are the number from 2018 till now, from the Chibok period, let's even say to 2014 till now. There are no clear, decisive data right now to say, okay, these are the number of girls in Nigeria that have been abducted, or the number of boys that have been abducted, or the total number of schools that have been attacked since 2014 till now. So if we bring in and embrace technology solution to manage our education, systems and those data, such data will be available for non-profit like ours to be able to make decisive, good, clear decisions, as to where to go to and areas to deploy solutions, in and all that. So these are things and many more, such as even online mentorship, for to talk about it right now, to even put it that way. As a system, as a foundation right now, that is the next phase that we are going into. Because these children right now are being discouraged. Imagine 1.9 million sat for an exam and 0.4, only 0.4.
God of the 300.
What do you think will happen to the rest 99.6? Psychologically, what do you think will happen to them? That's trauma already. That's huge discouragement. So there has to be need for, as a nation, for states and even local bodies, local organizations, to set up, mentoring platforms to guide these children, to encourage them, to even debunk some of the, communal and societal stereotypes on education that we have, such as education is a scam and all of that, to encourage these learners to still keep up, in their abilities, in their academics, just so that we don't have a collapsed state in the nearest future.
Wow, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then you've also brought out the part of private, non-profits, organizations that are not government. And then the question I want to ask here is, how much? Most of the people who failed are from the public schools. Many of them.
Correct.
Both for the UTME, the SSCE, many of them are from the public sector, public schools, And then the question will be, how much of the private schools we have in Nigeria is contributing to the dearth of, quality education, especially when it comes to the masses, the poor, the average Nigerian who cannot afford the high fees in the private schools? How much of that, does it contribute to what we're talking about?
Okay, good. I mean, you already mentioned it. I was going to say it outrightly, because the economic factor, it's a huge gap, has created a very wide gulf between learners of the private schools and learners in public schools. Because of the fees, these schools are being regulated quite all right. But again, these schools still have, just like in every part of the world, can come out and say, okay, this is the amount that we're going to put per pupil or per student in our schools. However, looking at the drop, looking at the drop of, the high cost of living standard in the society, and of course the high inflation rate and the high unemployment rate in the society, and the fast speed rate at which parents are losing their jobs due to, government, unstable policies and inflations and all that, it is on a daily basis hampering on who gets to go into this other side of the gulf, which is the private schools. So that is affected. So most people can only afford to take their children right now to the public schools. But with that being said, the private schools are not just the sole problem of all of these things. What we do as middlemen, as umpires, as development
Briefly,
practitioners.
because we have to wrap up. Go ahead.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Is for us to not compete with government. We don't compete with government. We don't even have government power. Government have they have the bigger power at the end of the day. They have both the fund and the political will. What we try to do is to say, okay, these are the researches we've made. These are the issues that we've discovered in the community. Please, let's fix this together. So when we have government who are listening, and of course who say, okay, these are the issues that you have found out. Let's collaboratively sort these things. Nigeria, our education system will be better off at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Oseni. Thank you. I'm hoping that somebody's really watching this and they would start taking action, because these researches are very important. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me always.
All right. That's where we end this episode of The Beam, and we are hoping you can keep the conversations going on all social media platforms where we are connected. Let us have your take on what we have been discussing, your deliberations. Let's have them. I'm Sunas Nathaniel, and until I grace your screens again very soon, I thought to remind you that the greatness of a nation does not lie in the population, but in the power given to its citizens. And there is no better way to give power than through education. Bye for now.